At the beginning of the story, we see a retired soldier, James Wright, who has suddenly barged into a martial arts school in Japan. His mission is to find his old enemy. But from the beginning, everything was going wrong. The man he is looking for is the father of the school's current master. The martial arts master is a respectable man who tolerates nothing against his family's honor. Hearing his father being insulted, he told his student to kill this American immediately. But the plan backfired. James is no ordinary soldier. He's a formidable fighter. He started taking them down one by one with lightning speed. The sensei understood that this was no ordinary man. He stopped his men and asked why he had come here. But before an answer can be found, the story flashes back to 1942. The Japanese army was building a camp at that time, which was called the March of Death. This was part of the plan to conquer all of Southeast Asia. World War I was going on, and James was sitting by his dead friend, whose body he had buried himself. Next morning, Japanese soldiers searched the jungle for their enemies. James hid nearby and threw a stone to distract them, then suddenly attacked. He killed one soldier and blew up a mine. For a few moments, he thought he was winning, but there were far more troops in the jungle than he had imagined. He ran through the trees, but was quickly caught. The commander said not to kill him, but to capture him alive. Take him to the camp. As he entered, all eyes fell on him. The colonel realized at once this was no ordinary man. He was a former British Air Force commander. Fearing a morale boost for the imprisoned soldiers, the colonel ordered the high-ranking officer to be killed secretly. At first, it seemed James had given up. But as the sword fell, he dodged it. Using his incredible fighting technique, he killed 3 guards and then fled to the jungle. Soon, he found the wreckage of a crashed plane, but he couldn't hide there for long either. He was just running away when his foot got caught in a hidden trap. The soldiers caught him again and brought him back to the camp. The colonel pulled off his dog tag and found a medal at his waist, which is awarded for exceptional bravery during war. The colonel was impressed by this and said not to kill him yet. Take him to the basement and let him rest. But this respite didn't last long. The next morning, they were going to send him into another fight where his death was certain. At night, a guard suggested killing him in his sleep, but the colonel refused. He wanted the entire camp to see the consequences of disobeying his orders. James was locked in a small cell where he met some other prisoners. Most of them were Americans. They asked if the British Army would save us, but James said nothing. They had heard that there were Vietnamese prisoners here before, but they were all killed before the army arrived. James remembered that when his squad arrived, their plane crashed due to heavy enemy fire, but he survived it all. A little later, James revealed that all the pilots stationed in this area had been killed, which meant there could be no rescue. The rules inside this Japanese prison are very strict, yet he decided he wouldn't give up so easily. No use! This camp is built on an island, with watchtowers and guards everywhere. Anyone who ever tries to escape from here gets caught. This camp is designed to break the strongest and most dangerous prisoners. We are all forced to do hard labor to make the walls of this camp even stronger. A little further up, there is another camp called the March of Death. No one has ever returned from there. No one knows what happens there. The next morning began with the sound of screams in the compound. All the soldiers were drilling in formation. The air was filled with the sound of their boots and their harsh discipline, and the time for punishment had now arrived. The soldiers tied James' hands and took him to the middle of the field. But before he was brought before everyone, the commander ordered the ropes cut and had him removed from there. In fact, the commander was saving James for something bigger. The real show is yet to come. 2 prisoners are about to be punished because they stole food from the rations and hid it under their beds. Their punishment was not death, but they would have to face the camp's most dangerous fighter. The camp's most formidable fighter looked very intimidating. His body was like a machine. His punches were so fast and powerful that even the strongest prisoners would back away in fear. This scene was meant to instill fear in everyone's hearts about the fate of those who steal from the Japanese army. After the match, everyone was now waiting for James' death. No one thought James had a chance of survival against such a dangerous fighter. But in just a few seconds, James took down that big and dangerous fighter with just 2 hits. The colonel said nothing. He quietly went back to his tent. Inside the tent, a soldier said, "Sir, James shouldn't be kept alive. He's the kind of man who should be tortured to death." But the colonel was thinking something different. There was a hint of respect in his eyes for the enemy's strength. But he promised that James' time would also come soon. Later, James met Captain Collins. Collins was amazed to see his fighting style. When everyone started getting drinks to celebrate, the bearded prisoner brought his homemade liquor, which was so strong it burned the throat like fire. But before the mood could lighten, the Japanese soldiers arrived. They summoned James to the colonel's tent. Inside the tent, a young nurse was arranging things. James and the nurse looked at each other for a moment. They didn't say anything, but they felt something. Then the colonel said, "I didn't call you here to praise you." He had recognized James' fighting style. It was a fighting method that had once been banned in Japan. Then the conversation turned to James' medal. This medal wasn't James, but his father's. The colonel said that his father was also in the army. Then he drew the sword of his dead officer and made a slight cut on James' cheek and then told the guards to take him away. It was a clear message that James would die tomorrow. The next morning, the colonel was arranging another fight. He knew that James' fighting style was excellent for a one-on-one fight, but it wouldn't work against many enemies. That's why he made the strongest soldiers of his team fight him. But James moved like a storm. Within a minute, he had taken down all 3. He could have finished them with his final blow, but James stopped. He didn't kill them. The colonel again went into his tent without saying a word. Later, when James' comrades were making fun of those Japanese soldiers, James said that those soldiers were not cowards. They were just following their commander's orders, just like us. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. A short while later, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the camp. The colonel had the 3 defeated fighters killed. He wanted to show everyone that there was no place for mercy here. Gabriel's and Collins' wounds were getting worse. Soon, they would be sent to the camp from which no one returns. Time was short, so James made a dangerous plan. He had seen a radio on top of the watchtower. If he could get to the radio, he could signal the British forces off the coast. Once that signal was sent, British forces would surely come for a rescue. The prisoners planned to create a diversion during their next work shift. Screaming broke out. All the guards ran there. The soldier from the tower also came down. James ran towards the tower and climbed up. He broke the radio off and hid behind the sandbags. Just as he was about to leave, the nurse saw him. After a while, a soldier started hitting on the nurse. The nurse refused him, saying she didn't want any of it, after which he slapped the nurse hard. But even after much questioning, the nurse said nothing about James. Returning to his sleeping area, James hid the radio. Everyone decided not to send a signal yet, just listen. Maybe they would pick up a British or American signal. But the next morning, danger arrived at their doorstep. The colonel called an emergency meeting. He wanted to find out who had tried to escape. James saw the prisoner looking extremely nervous, and at night, he spoke to him very gently. The prisoner told him that there is a small spot right at the corner of the border. I've made a secret hole there. I was slowly making it bigger so I could get out of here. Now, James had decided to escape. At night, he made his bed look like someone was sleeping with their face covered and quietly slipped out. The bearded soldier also helped him. After many months, he stepped outside the camp. At that very moment, a guard came for inspection and saw James was missing. But after looking into the bearded man's eyes, he said nothing and left. James made his way through the jungle to the coast. Now, through the radio, he suddenly heard a secret code from the American army. This meant the American army was nearby, perhaps preparing to attack. There he also found the crashed plane he had seen earlier. Near the plane, there was also a metal hook, which gave James a new idea. Then James quietly went back to his room through the same spot. The next morning, James called all his comrades and told them what he had seen. The voices on the radio were in the Navajo language, which is used only by the American army. This meant that American soldiers were nearby. James told them one more thing. He had found an intact glider-like aircraft in the jungle. If they could attach the glider to a passing plane, it could fly them to safety. The plan seemed insane, but what did they have to lose? They were willing to accept even this small glimmer of hope. Everyone agreed to help despite the danger, but their hope didn't last long. The soldiers arrived and James was taken before the colonel. The colonel had also heard the Navajo language himself and wanted James to translate it for them. But James explained that it's used by the American forces. I'm from Britain, and even if I knew, I wouldn't betray my comrades. This angered the colonel to his knees. Harder. Now, sounds of pain echoed in the tent. When James fell, the guards were about to cut his ropes and beat him with their fists. But that's when James initiated his real plan. With his remaining strength, he struck down a guard, right in front of the colonel. The colonel felt deeply humiliated that Colonel Ido's soldiers had lost to a single man. In a fit of rage, he went to the middle of the camp and killed some workers right there. He said that now the rest of them would live a life worse than death. James passed out from enduring so much pain. When he regained consciousness 2 days later, he was in the infirmary. The colonel had ordered them to keep him alive. His wounds were being treated by the same young nurse whose name was Teresa. She had been working at the camp for 3 months and was trapped just like the other prisoners. James was about to ask her something when a soldier came and separated them. At night, James lay alone in his bed. Suddenly, he heard the sound of gunshots. When he opened his eyes, a knife was gleaming near his face. Colonel Ito was killing another man in front of everyone to intimidate them further. It was an extremely painful sight, but during this, James understood the colonel's true intention. Ito didn't want to kill James secretly. Every match, every fight is an opportunity for him to kill James in a fair fight, just like his teacher had taught him. James was a bit tired, but his spirits were high. He said that if these were your best fighters, then I'll definitely go back home alive. The colonel's face didn't even flinch. He warned that if Japan lost, not a single person in the camp would be left alive. After this, James returned to his companions. His friends told him that American planes had come in the morning. They had dropped thousands of pamphlets. Inside these pamphlets was a warning to the Japanese soldiers that the American army was watching their every move, and the mistreatment of prisoners was also being observed. Justice will be served as soon as the war is over, but this didn't matter to James. He said that Ito would never surrender. Even if Japan lost, he would kill everyone here. Everyone listened silently, thinking that time might just run out. At night, Gabriel went into the jungle to check the glider. On his way back, he met James. The direct path to their room had been blocked, so they both started sneaking along the side, but a guard spotted them. In the ensuing fight, they had to kill the guard, or they would have been caught. Hearing the noise, another officer arrived. Instead of killing the man, James let him go. That officer secretly sent them both back to their room. But then he told the guards that a guard had been murdered. Hearing this, the soldiers stormed into the prisoners' rooms. A silence fell over the camp. By morning, the colonel decided that the real killer had to be found. To save his companions, James came forward and said, "It was me. I killed him." The colonel demanded proof of this. He told James to use his technique on a prisoner. But when that prisoner said he wouldn't perform this charade, the guard shot him straight in the head. Then Captain Collins was sent to fight, and he defeated them all as well. All the prisoners were herded back to their rooms like animals. James stood before the colonel again. James called him a coward and said, "Fight me if you have the guts." The colonel headbutted James, injuring him, and had him thrown out. That same night, James and Gabriel actually escaped. They made their way through the jungle towards the shore to contact the American forces. They were talking together using different languages so the Japanese soldiers wouldn't understand. Their plan was very straightforward. Steal a rocket to send a signal, fire it into the air so the plane can find their location. Attach the glider to the plane, and they could fly off the island using the glider. This was the only way to escape from there. When they returned to their camp room, it was desolate. The room was empty, the lights were off. Suddenly, soldiers rushed in and knocked them out too. They woke to thundering planes overhead. Looking at the sky, the camp nurses thought that perhaps the Americans had now come to save us. A few moments later, chaos erupted throughout the camp. The prisoners were tied up, and the sound of explosions echoed across the entire island. The American forces had attacked. Colonel Ito had now lost control of this place. In a fit of rage, he started killing every person in sight, whether they were a soldier or a prisoner. In the midst of the gunfire, James realized they had to get to the radio and talk to the American soldiers again. But when they reached the radio, it was completely destroyed. Now their only hope was the transmitter on the tower. On this occasion, the nurses showed courage. They distracted the guard, called him over, and then killed him. The way was clear now. Atop the tower, Gabriel sent an emergency signal. Below, madness took over the entire camp. The Japanese soldiers started firing at the prisoners who were trying to escape. James couldn't just watch this silently. He also grabbed a rifle and started shooting. This killed some guards and gave courage to the other prisoners. Gradually, a major rebellion broke out in the camp. The prisoners started fighting with whatever they could find. During the fight, Captain Collins confronted the officer who'd been harassing him from the start. The fight became very intense, but didn't last long. Collins was about to win, but then someone shot him from behind, and he fell right there. Seeing his friend fall like that, James became even angrier. He went straight into the colonel's tent where Colonel Ito was standing with a sword. A fierce fight broke out between the two. In the end, Ito fell and James remained standing, very tired, his body covered in blood, but he had now won. Gabriel dragged James outside. The planes were circling above and time was short. The two of them started to run from there. A soldier raised his rifle to shoot them from behind, but Colonel Ito knocked the soldier's gun away with his sword. He let them both go. This was his way of showing respect to the victor. James and Gabriel ran through the jungle and reached the glider. The American planes hovering above began their final assault. Just then, Japanese soldiers emerged from between the trees to attack, but the planes started firing. All the Japanese soldiers were killed right there. The good and the bad, all were gone. In the midst of this smoke and fighting, James picked up the tow cable and attached it to the glider. An American plane passed by and caught the cable. After that, the glider flew into the air. The island slowly grew smaller below. The two of them vowed that one day they would return and rescue the others from here as well. Years later, this same vow brought James to that small martial arts school in Japan. He had come to find the man who had taught Colonel Ito. The new master there sent his students away and began to listen carefully to James. The master explained that his father and the old guru had died a year ago. Before he died, he had said that one day a foreigner would come, a man who fights with a technique that was banned years ago. The master told James to show his technique. James calmed down a bit and showed some deadly moves, but did not strike. The master understood that this was the man who had been spoken of. Then he took out a small wooden box. Inside it was James' father's medal and a dog tag. Two warriors who might have been enemies in another time, but now stand together in peace. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.